welcome back to the channel. It's Natalie here with you. I am using the berry basket today. We're going to make a cute little, I think that's pretty stinking cute, little sort of window. I'm going to use pretty much all of these berries and raspberries and leaves, and we're just going to go to town. And I'm also going to stamp these out a little bit more on another sheet of paper. So today we're going to use the arch border frame, and as I said, we're going to make a little window. I have another die that has a window, but I really was after that big wide arch window. Now I'm only going to show you a little bit of the colouring. So with the leaves we've got YG67, YG17, YG03 and YG01. And I just want to show you basically sort of the rough idea of how I'm colouring these. Obviously where something is sitting underneath it, there's going to be a shadow. So pretty much all of these, well, those except that one there, the other two both have that middle leaf sitting underneath the other leaves sort of thing. So that's going to provide a little bit of a shadow. So yeah, as I said, I'm only going to really show you these three and a couple of the raspberries. I think I'll show you a bit more of the raspberries because we're going to do a little bit with white gel marker just to change that over and change that up a little bit and give it a little bit of a highlight, but a soft highlight, because they're pretty small. But you know, usually there's a little bit of a highlight. I had to Google a lot of images of raspberries and even strawberries. Now the leaves of all the berries, we're pretty much going to keep it to the middle two colours, so the YG17 and Y13. My reds are going to be the R59, R29 and R27. Just giving myself a bit of a highlight on that right hand side. Now I'm really not fussing, because at this point I didn't really know where everything was going to be sitting. This is the leaves here. Don't stress too much about shading because it's really fine. You're still going to see, like, I can see this shading in my leaves of my strawberries and my raspberries, but it's not a focal point, so don't stress. With our little raspberries, I start out with RV69, the RV66 and 63, but it was a little bit too purpley, a little bit too pink. So I'm going to do a bit of colour glazing with the R14, shall we say, and that is going to be straight over the top. The leaves, I'm not making anything. See, that just sort of dulls it down. It reddens that not to be quite so pinky. All the raspberries, as they're only very small, I've legit only put a dot in the center of it and then built it out with the other three. And you can see there, I've gone over this whole thing with the RV63. And then at the very end of it, just glaze it over the top with the R14, and that they're still sort of pinky, but they're a lot toned down, should we say. So I've got a jelly roll pen and I'm putting a dot in the middle and then just using my finger just to tap it off, so it's still there, but it provides that little bit of a highlight. This one I'm just sort of smushing it so it runs down the strawberry slightly, and then just keep playing with it until I'm happy. I've cut all those out with the coordinating dies, including all the little flowers. So this is the die that I was looking at, but we're going to use this arch frames instead. It cuts out quite a few. I've cut it out a couple of times, so we're going to layer up this arch to make our window. What I'm also going to do, I cut out 3 by the end of it. I'm going to use these just offcuts, just checking on the sizing, and it's like, yep, that will do. I'm not stressing about it. They're not exactly right. You can sort of see it there a little bit if you really, because you know about it. But the person that receives this card, they're not even going to realize. Using my mat just to, it looks really wonky, but I'm using the mat to make sure my lines are all straight and roughly in the middle. Again, I'm not stressing about it. I'm just eyeballing it. These crossbar, shall we call it, they're usually quite a little bit lower. So again, I'm really not stressing about it whatsoever. So we're going to let that glue. I need a little tiny bit in the center there, but we'll do that in a minute. Here we go. Just to adhere that down. At this point, I'm just going to put my lid and figure out my card. I'm sort of trying to figure out what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. We'll trim that all off. What I'm going to do after I clean it off, because I make a mess, I end up in this really tiny little area. Using a pencil, I'm just going to mark around my frame. We're going to trim that out, but what I'm going to do is just use a little bit of the grass ink and sponge that over. The original idea was going to be just having the left-hand corner going upwards and going across the bottom with the green, but I've decided to change my mind. You'll see that. I am not worried about having it really super smooth because it's going to be in the background and the focus is going to be on the berries, so it's not going to matter. It doesn't matter whatsoever. And if you look at the card now, it just looks like a bit of a shadow on the areas that you can see, but it's not something that's very out, so I'm not fussed about it whatsoever. As long as you've got, it's the same as with your colouring, as long as you've got sort of areas that are really like a detailed and nice blending and nice shadows. If you have little areas that just have one colour, no one's going to know. I decided I needed to raise this up a little bit more, so we cut that out for your viewing pleasure because it was a bit fiddly. It was very fiddly, and I've still got a little gooby there in the center that we'll have to trim off in a minute. Remove all those. So there is the start of our window. Just trying to figure out whether I'm going to have that on white. I'm actually going to layer that up on black very shortly. And we're going to do a little bit of freehand cutting. Now, a lot of people don't like this, but this actually doesn't have an extra layer or a solid layer for our arch. There are other arches, but they didn't quite line up with this darkest color. The largest die. So I'm just placing all my little bits. This is a little bit fiddly, I will totally grant it, but I think you might, hopefully you agree, because I love it. It's so cool. I love this card. Things just sort of work out nicely and just work out the way you want it. I am not afraid to cut up my die cuts. I am not wasting a pretty little die cut. That is all going to be hidden. I've got a little bit of press and seal here just to pick up roughly where I wanted everything. It's not dead set, cast in stone, shall we say, but it's just to try and keep them together because they are pretty fiddly little darlings. A little bit more of a surgery. This one obviously is going to be sort of a bit of a different angle, which is just going to provide a little bit more interest. And that's how our card is starting. So I've still got a few bits and pieces. And honestly, I use every single one of those. I use 2 of them for the inside of the card because I had them left over. So I thought, why not? So on the inside of the card is just You're the Sweetest with a couple of the leaves. If I had berry, that would have been cooler, but we used up all our little berries. I'm just gluing those down with a little bit of wet glue because that is my my choice. That's my preference, I should say. Using a little bit of wet glue just to glue all these down. Now there's going to be some that are going to be raised up, and there's a couple that I actually pulled up and I raised them up even like more. So part of it's glued and part of it's all raised up. So we're going to play with that a little bit. So what else can I tell you? So we've got the berry basket for the basket and weaves, and the arch border frame. I'm also going to use a bit of, I don't know, if this wasn't be me, if I didn't use this, a little bit of the crystal mix, just a scattering of it here and there, just to raise up, just to provide a little bit more interest in the design. Otherwise you end up with a little bit of just an empty space in the rest of the window. I mean, we're going to put a little sentiment in there, and that's going to be out of the same stamp set, the berry basket. This little piece, we've got a couple of little pieces that are over the edge, and that's fine. This one's all trimmed up nice and square. Because we're going to mount this up on another piece of cardstock and do a little bit of freehand drawing, that's not going to be a problem that they're sticking over the edge. I did originally stamp this in white with black writing, but it's just like, no, I can't do it. It's just getting lost. It's too much white. So I'm going to stamp that down with some Versamark and white, emboss that onto the black cardstock. A little anti-static pad, and I still have a little tiny bit that I have to scrape off because the words are pretty. You can see there on the top right hand corner, the words are pretty finely together. Finely together, is that a word? Pretty fine. I'll clean that up a little bit, but there were still a couple of spots right in the center of my letterings. And this piece of cardstock is just a bit of scrap because I do use most of my scrap. Some, let's be honest, there's some scraps so you sort of go, it's just not worth it. So we're going to trim him down, and he's just going to stick in between some of our berries and our leaves. We do lose most of the leaf that's underneath it, but you can see a tiny bit, but that's all right. I've got foam mounted on either side. Now I did have some foam, but I just decided it was just too big. So this is going to be too tall. So this is down a little bit. And we'll have a little bit of glue right in the center to keep him nice and secured. So the only things we've really got to do is do our background. So I'm going to have a little piece of, just get rid of that gooby, a piece of cardstock. What I'm going to do is very carefully draw around it, just probably a couple of millimeters apart, probably away from the edge of the frame, the arch. It's probably about 2-3 millimeters. Cut that out. Now this is not going to be perfect, but I'm going to play with it just a little bit until I'm happy enough with it, because the focus is going to be the strawberries and the raspberries. So until I'm happy with it, it's just trimming it off, checking where it's sitting and how it's sitting on with the window, and just going back and forth. See, there's a bit up the top. So you and I know about this, but the person that receives this card is not going to see it. Is not going to go, hang on, there's a little point there, or that line's a bit wonky. They're not going to see it because their eyes are going to be fixed on the focal point, and that's the best thing about it. Sorry about that. Got interrupted by a phone call. Trying to book into apps. We're going on a cruise in 29 days. Woohoo! So yeah, I'm booking into trying to log into apps and everything else for that. Anywho, So the last little bit, so that's all done. Last little bit is crystal mix with a little bit of wet glue, and that is it. I hope you are well. If you liked what you saw today, hit the subscribe button and hit the like and the little bell, and you'll get notified of whenever we upload new videos. So I hope that's it. I hope you're well. Take care. I will talk to you very soon. Bye.